He told us to leave before the light went out. Those are the last coherent words from a fishing boat, a distress call from 2018. As a journalist, you're supposed to start with the facts, right? The verifiable data. But what do you do when all the facts point to something that just shouldn't exist? This is one of those stories.
All right, let's get right into it. We're cracking open the case file on what sailors have come to call the Wanderer Lighthouse. Now, on paper, it sounds like a classic ghost story. You know, a legend that's been whispered in port towns for over a century. But when you start to follow the evidence trail, you find something that feels way more real and a whole lot stranger.
Every good investigation needs a starting point. And for us, that's the 2018 distress call. And look, this wasn't some old-timey yarn from a dusty book. We're talking about a modern vessel with modern equipment and an officially documented Coast Guard rescue that, honestly, left everyone with far more questions than answers. Yeah, and this is where the official record gets weird. The Coast Guard found the boat, no problem. But the lighthouse the captain was yelling about on the radio, nowhere to be seen, vanished. And the crew, they were all there, alive, but gone. Just huddled together, completely unresponsive, like they were trapped in some kind of waking nightmare. The only clue they had was the captain, just repeating that one phrase, "He told us to leave." So the big question is, who is he? Now, for the authorities, that 2018 event was just a bizarre, isolated incident. A mystery, sure, but a one-off. But for maritime historians, for researchers like a Dr. Lin who've been digging into this for years, it was something else entirely. It was confirmation. It was proof that this wasn't a single event, but just the latest entry in a very long and very unsettling file. And this is where it gets really tough to just brush this off. You look at dozens and dozens of reports, and the details are stubbornly consistent. First, it only ever shows up during the absolute worst weather. Second, it's never in the same place twice, which naturally is how it got the name Wanderer. But the description, it is always identical. A stone tower, a single light, and a beam that rotates in this strange, irregular way. A pattern that doesn't match any registered lighthouse on Earth. And let's be clear, we are not talking about a few scattered sea stories swapped in a port bar. Dr. Lin has compiled 47 official, documented reports of sightings, dating all the way back to 1902. At that point, it stops being folklore, doesn't it? That's a pattern. That's a statistical anomaly that is just screaming for an explanation. So we've got the data, but now let's talk about the people. Because behind every one of those dry official reports is a chilling first-hand account. A story from someone who saw that light and somehow lived to tell the tale. And trust me, these are the stories that are really, really hard to just explain away. Take this account from an old fisherman everyone just called Old Tom. He claims the Wanderer appeared so close to his boat he could see the door was wide open, like an invitation. But he said he just had this gut feeling, this primal instinct just screaming at him to stay away. And that little detail about his compass, that it never worked right after that, it suggests whatever he encountered left a physical, measurable trace. I mean, sure, it's one man's story, but it's another piece in the puzzle. And when you look at the timeline, you see just how persistent this thing is. It's not some relic of a bygone era. You've got a mysterious logbook found floating in the ocean in the 50s, a terrifying final radio broadcast in the 70s, all the way up to the catatonic crew in 2018 and a bizarre sonar anomaly in 2020. It feels like the case file on the Wanderer just refuses to stay closed. But out of all the accounts, that 1975 transmission, man, that's the one that sticks with you. You can hear it on the tape. The sailor's voice isn't panicked. It's calm, almost resigned. He's describing seeing the lighthouse, seeing a figure waving. And his last words aren't a frantic cry for help. They're a goodbye. And right after he says, "I have to go," the radio just cuts to static. End of transmission. When the Coast Guard found the boat the next day, it was adrift and completely empty. It's a classic ghost ship story, right? The kind of thing you hear about the Flying Dutchman. Except this one isn't a legend. It's in an official report with a date, a location, and a list of names for a crew that was never seen again. So you have to ask yourself, with all of this, eyewitnesses, potential physical evidence, entire crews vanishing, why isn't this the most famous maritime mystery in the world? Well, that's where the investigation hits a brick wall. A wall of official denial and folder-stamped classified. Just look at some of the evidence that's been tucked away in the archives. In 1952, a keeper's log is found just floating at sea. A
The entries cover decades, but the handwriting never ages. Fast forward to 2020. A high-tech deep-sea mapping team gets a perfect sonar image of a vertical tower on the seafloor where there should be absolutely nothing. Then, just as quickly, it vanishes, and their systems glitch out. The lead scientists only comment, "Some things should stay at the bottom."
And then there's this. For me, this is the smoking gun. It's from a declassified Coast Guard memo. It acknowledges the recurring sightings, and then it concludes with one line: recommend no further investigation. Now, think about that. Why would an organization dedicated to safety at sea recommend ignoring a potential hazard? It makes no sense unless they've concluded the hazard is something you can't chart on a map. So all of this really leaves us with two competing theories.
On one hand, you have the rational, scientific explanation, infrasound. It's the idea that deep underwater canyons can create low-frequency sound waves during storms that are known to cause feelings of dread and even complex shared hallucinations. Then you've got Dr. Lin's theory, that the lighthouse is a dimensional anchor, a real place that phases into our reality during the immense energy of a storm.
And as a journalist, this is the quote that really gets under my skin. As Dr. Lin puts it, sure, the brain can be tricked. One person can hallucinate, maybe even a few can share delusion, but how do 47 separate events, decades apart, all produce the exact same hallucination? The same stone tower, the same regular light, the same figure in the doorway. That consistency, that's what's so haunting about this whole thing.
So let's just entertain the idea for a minute. Let's say it's real. Then the investigation completely shifts. It's no longer about what it is, but why it's there. What is its purpose? Is it a warning? A trap? Or, as some of the survivors seem to believe, is it an invitation? And at the heart of that question is the keeper, that lone figure people see waving. Who is he? The ghost of a 19th century keeper still bound to his post? A physical manifestation of the sea itself? A guide meant to help the lost? Or something else entirely? We don't have answers, only theories trying to put a face to the mystery. The stories from the very few who claim to have actually stepped inside are even more bizarre. They talk about impossible physics, of spiral stairs that shift under their feet, from cold stone to splintered wood to rusted metal as they climb. And almost all of them recall hearing a disembodied whisper echoing in the tower. You should not have come.
And this really gets to the crucial point, to the haunting conclusion Dr. Lin came to after decades of research. The sailors who see the Wanderer and escape, they're changed. But here's the twist. They no longer fear the storms or the waves, they fear the light. Because they believe the lighthouse isn't a beacon of salvation, they believe it's a door.
And maybe that's the question that sits at the very heart of this.
It doesn't seem to be a random event. The Wanderer seems to manifest specifically for those at their breaking point. The ones caught in a storm, with failing equipment, all hope gone. It offers a choice, it seems, but only to the truly desperate.
Which brings us to the final, unsettling thought. And I want you to really put yourself in this scene. Imagine you're out there, in the dark, tossed around by a storm. You are utterly lost. And then, through the rain, you see a light. A warm, steady light from a stone tower with an open door and a figure waving you in. What do? Do you sail past, back into the storm and certain doom? Or do you head for the light? Would you turn away?